So thank you, folks, for joining us today. Excuse our technical difficulties. Um, hopefully, we will. Let me know if you have any issues. Just a lot of people are. Everybody who comes in is muted, and the cameras are automatically turned off, just so we can minimize distractions and keep things a little bit more focused. I'm going to turn over to Sierra for just a few minutes, and then we'll get down to business.
Yeah, so hello everybody, my name is Sierra Hilton and I am the South Carolina AdaptoStream Program Coordinator. I work for DHEC in Columbia, and we are one of two co-leaders with the AdaptoStream program, so DHEC and Clemson's Watershed Center for Watershed Excellence. And together we help run a volunteer water quality monitoring program where anyone can become a citizen scientist and help contribute data that can be used by anyone, so by agencies, educators, researchers, and really with the goal of education and then also improving water quality across South Carolina. So we've teamed up with Amanda here to explore one of the tools that our volunteers learn about during a workshop, which is called the Watershed Atlas. And I'll let Amanda introduce that more in just a second. But this webinar series is part 2 of the series. So we've already covered some of the basic tips and tricks in the first part, which I can find that link and put into the chat in just a moment. And then if you've attended that or would like to watch that, then part 2, which is what we'll cover today, is some advanced tips and tricks. So definitely ask questions. Now's a great time to reach out because Amanda's one of our experts. And we're always looking to improve the tool and make it more useful for everyone in South Carolina and beyond. So Amanda, take it away, and then I will answer questions past that.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen because what we're doing today is looking at the Watershed Atlas. So can Sarah give me a shout out if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the Watershed Atlas, and I don't think I mentioned this the first time, but we kind of went live with this, and I believe it was 2015, right after the flooding hit from Hurricane Joaquin. It was very helpful to have this information and a lot of layers to use in response to some of the questions that were coming up with flooding. And that was the launching year, the launching date. It's only expanded from there. We've had a couple of new templates and a couple of new, several new tools and features added since then. I will say that the data that's on this is updated mostly real time. The program areas are responsible for their own data entry into DHEC's GIS system. And of course, if it's something like the 303D list, which maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't know about, that is something that is on a cycle. And so it comes out every 2 years generally. So when that's updated, the data will be updated in the Atlas as well. So today we're going to talk about some things that I think will really be helpful for you. I'm super excited about, especially one of them. So we're going to be talking about adding data. We're going to talk about the attribute table tools, which are very helpful, and then how to select different records and layers within the GIS application. I have a couple of other things to talk about if time allows. But one big thing to kind of talk about is if you're interested in storing your maps or kind of storing what you were saving, what the views that you were looking at, and then coming back to look at it at a later date, we can cover that as well. So let's get down to it. Hopefully, like I said, you saw the first recording of the first webinar. So again, this is a little bit more advanced. I want to start off by talking about adding data. And this is something that you can add from a search within the content or within Arcgis Online. You can go to a link in the internet and find something helpful, or you can download a file. And I think most people probably either use this feature or the file feature. And so I'm just going to discuss both of those today. This is very, very cool. I think this will really help you all a lot. I'm going to go to Arcgis Online and this little content dropdown. I will say some of these records, some of the data layers within this, sometimes you have to have an account with Arcgis Online, but generally speaking, these are mostly available to the everyday citizen. So what I'm going to do is type it. So I'm on Arcgis Online. I'm going to type in something specifically that I think will help y'all out a lot. And this is just US, excuse me, not USGS, but let's see, water watch real time. Okay, so I'm going to click on the first one here. So this is supposedly real-time information from USGS. And so you just click add and you see it pops up. I'm going to move this a little bit. This is more than just South Carolina, but you can see we've got these gauges. It's added a layer to the top here of the table of contents. You can turn it off, but you can't actually remove the layer here in the table of contents. If you decide that's not the layer that you want, you would just come over here to remove. Okay, but I want to talk about it, so I'm going to go back and add it. You can also go to layers if you have multiple layers that you've added or multiple data layers that you've added. You can go through, they would all be listed here, and you can remove specifically the ones that you wanted. So the neat thing about this is when you click on this arrow, we've discussed before how this shows the different icons and the different for the different attributes within that layer. But I just wanted to click on a couple of these and show you. Say, I think a couple of scenarios for this would be if you knew you were going to go sampling at a specific point, and maybe that area fluctuates a lot based on rain. Maybe you're concerned, oh, it's been raining a lot. I don't want to go to an area where it's flooding. Let's see, let me let some people in the lot who are in the lobby.
I clicked it already.
Okay, great. If you think it's been flooding and there's a concern, then you can go to this area and check it first. Another scenario would be if you get a high reading for something like bacteria, you can kind of compare it to previous years. So just clicking on a basic one here, you get your pop-up menu. You see how much you've got to flow right now at the stage that it's at. Some of this is information I'm not really familiar with because I work at DHEC instead of USGS. But you can go to the USGS station page, which is so cool, guys. This is really fun. Please load. This will be the time it doesn't load. Okay, so this is the neat part. You can set it for 7 days, 30 days, or a year. Okay, this is your data right here. So you can see, again, this is based on, remember I said, like if you have a scenario where maybe you have a lot of rain and you want to see how that might have affected stormwater runoff or bacteria, you can actually subscribe to alerts. So if you know something goes really high, when it gets really high, like a lot of times if it rains a lot in the Broad and it's coming into places where people might recreate, then we get concerned about high bacteria counts. And so you could set it to an alert threshold. You can set different ranges for that. This will also compare years. So you could come up here, let's see. You could set it for 30 days or 1 year, but there is one area where you could compare it to last year at this time. And so you see, oh, we have this really high spike. Well, last year it wasn't doing that. So maybe you might see kind of lower macroinvertebrate issues, macroinvertebrates right here. Maybe they got washed away briefly during a high flooding event or a high rain event. Maybe you'll have some high bacteria counts or some high turbidity, depending on what you're sampling for. So I just thought this was very cool. Again, you click on this from the USGS gauges real time. You can click on any of these. It gives you that information. You can go straight to the USGS station page for that. So I'm going to turn this off for now because that's all we wanted to discuss on that. I want to show you quickly how to add a file and something that you need to know about before you start adding files. You will want to be using zipped KML files. So if you, again, I don't know a lot about this kind of particular file, but it's a if you have a KMZ file, you're going to want to convert it to KML. And you can see use CSV, so it's kind of a version of Excel, and then of course KML. And so making sure that they're zipped before you add them to the Atlas. So I'm going to search for one. This is one that I got. This is a 3A3D list from 2018, so it's impaired stations with no shellfish harvesting. Okay, so you see it turns it on. And again, you're going to have all these, you're going to have, unfortunately, it's just one icon, but you can go in here, you can view an attribute table. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, so you can see all the different attributes of each record. By the way, for future reference, one of these is a record, and then there's multiple attributes for it. So I'm going to turn this off again. If you wanted to go back and completely remove it, you would come here to layers, and I'm just going to remove both of those. Okay. All right. So that's adding data, nice and easy. If you have any questions about that, feel free to stick it in the chat. The next thing I want to talk about is the attribute table tools. So there's a couple different ways that you can get to them. My favorite way is to turn on the layer and then go to the little asterisk beside the layer and say view an attribute table. But if you'll notice, you have all these up here, and this corresponds to this. So if I'm on impaired waters, but I decided, oh, I really want to be on county boundary, I can just switch it like that. So I'm going to go back to impaired waters. Another thing you can do is if you want to see a layer that's not currently listed in this view, you can search for it this way, or you can search for it this way. So a couple different ways to find it. So I'm going to go back to my, I lost it. Okay. The attribute table I consider advanced because there's so much that you can do with it. So one of the things I want to show to you is that the see, you can change these based on, so right now Savannah, Salkehatchie, Savannah, you can actually list these in terms of ascending or descending. You can add or take away the particular columns that you want to see. Maybe you don't want to see the county name or the multi-type. So if you don't really want to scroll all the way over, that's too much. You can go in and kind of remove the view of some of those columns. You can also do some other neat things here. You can show or hide this way as well. So this is one way to do it. And then coming over here to options is another way to do it. I'm just going to add these back in because I'm going to try something later. Something else that you can do is export this to a CSV file. So again, that's kind of that. You're probably familiar with the fact that this is a Excel type of file, a spreadsheet type of file. So you're going to open this up, and I'm going to pull this over so that you can see the screen. And then once you're in here, you would probably want to save it as an Excel spreadsheet, but this helps you to manipulate the actual data itself. You can sort it, you can import it into other things. You could even take this, turn it into another file, and save it back into another application if you needed to. But that's just one way of manipulating that data. The neat thing to me is selecting. So there's a couple different ways of doing this. The reasons you would want to select records or attributes for a scenario example would be maybe you're in Richland County and you're wanting to know where certain stations are that are sampled by DHEC are coming up as impaired for, let's say, macroinvertebrates or bacteria. So there's a couple of different ways that you can sort this information. And the only reason I say comparing it to DHEC stations is maybe you're sampling at or near a DHEC station. And in my mind, you know, it seems kind of like it would be neat to have data that, as you're granted, you know, there might be some slightly differences in how you're sampling, but sometimes it's kind of neat to compare the two. I know it's apples to cantaloupes, but still getting similar information. So what you would want to do, first of all, is you can come over here to options, and I'm going to do filter. So you would do add expression. And for this particular example, what I'm going to do is talk about impaired waters. So you would come over here, and I'm in the impaired waters attribute table. And so you're going to scroll all the way down, in this case, to impairment. And then is going to stay that way. You're going to say, come over here to this gear and say value. So value is checked. I just want to make sure you can see that you've got this drop down menu and you've got 3 different options to choose from. So you're going to do is value. Okay. Value, you actually have to write this in. So in this case, I'm going to write in biological because I want to show all the biological impairments. In this case, I'm just going to say the state, just to make it a little easier. So you saw how we just went down in that number. You can see there was lots of impairments all across the state, and now all we're doing is we're showing these biological impairments. And just to show you, this is the field that I'm kind of manipulating. So remember in that options, and then when I filtered it, that first field that was a drop down menu, I labeled as biological. So now anything that's in here that's showing up as biological impairments, that's the only thing that's being shown on the map. Okay. So the other thing I want to show you is coming back here, the difference between this and a unique kind of expression. So in this case, I'm going to keep impairment here, but I want to show you that if you tried to go to unique, this is going to be something that you're going to have a drop down now instead. Also, I need to keep this as is, and I'm going to say add something a little different because I want to show you how you're going to reduce that number even more. And so if you're looking for something specific, you would be narrowing down that search even more. In this case, I want to show you E. coli and biological. So I'm going to keep scrolling until I get, well, let's go back up to biological and do E. coli. Okay, so this one. And then let's see if I can move this. You see all these icons currently, it's going to reduce a lot just based on what I've just asked for it to query. See? So now out of all those biological impairments, now we have ones that are showing a combination of biological and E. coli impairments. One other thing I want to teach you is the difference between that word is and I'm having flashbacks to President Clinton when he said, what is the difference? What is the definition of the word and? But in this case, we're going to turn it back over to, let's see, value. And we're going to say contains. Now, the neat thing about contains is it's only going to work with this value here. And so in this case, I'm going to say it contains biological. It's just kind of a different way of querying this information. And so now it's everything that has biological in it. So it's going to have E. coli, but it's also going to have some other things like, we'll keep scrolling down until we find some additional. Let's see, lots and lots of biological. Okay, well, this should be things that contain biological. So you see that just based on what you're looking for, you can filter out and query those different types of impairments or those different kind of records that you're looking for. If you have questions about this, please feel free to put it in the chat or even contact me later. This is something I'm still learning about, to be perfectly honest with you. I love this. It's easier to do it in the Atlas than it is to do it in regular GIS. My brain functions don't want to work really well with queries. I'm not really good at that kind of particular language, but that's definitely something that as you play more with, you start to kind of get the idea of how things work. So I'm still learning myself. It's something fun to play with in my free time, but I'm definitely learning more about how certain queries and certain expressions are going to help you narrow down your focus for particular data. So another thing I want to show you is that Let's see, we'll turn it back. So now we don't have any filters. Okay, good. So we've got all these impairments. I'm nice and zoomed out. So I'm looking at the entire state here. I want you to notice we have 1,040 features. Okay. If I zoom in to a particular area, let's say, I'm going to go over here to the county. Let's say you're interested in impairments in York County. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And now I want you to pay attention to this number again. I'm going to filter by map extent. Come back way over here. Okay. And if I zoom in, see, we've already gone down a number there. So we had 1,040 features. Now we have 49. If I zoom in even more, you saw that there was a little flash there, was refreshing, and now we have even fewer. So there's even ways of selecting and filtering things in here. If I wanted to zoom to a particular area, a couple ways I can do that. I'm thinking to myself, what is this interesting station right here? And I would click on it. And I can click on the ellipses and it will take me to the attribute table for that particular station. Okay. I can close that out and filter by map extent again, refresh. It's going to give me that number again, that lower number, but it's going to show all those stations as opposed to just the one that I clicked on. Another thing is if you click on one or two individually, you see that I'm starting to kind of zoom. You see these different highlighted areas that are starting to appear. So you'll see where they are as you click in the attribute table. You'll see where they are located in the map itself. You can zoom straight to that by clicking on that zoom to button. Or if you want to, and one other way, and I'm just going to come back out it a little bit so you can see. Another way that you could do it would be to, let's see, find a different one. Okay, so if I wanted to zoom to it, I could again either do that zoom to, or I can double click on that record. Okay, so you can do clear selection and refresh, and it takes you right back to the extent that you're interested in. Just checking my notes here to make sure that I'm getting everything that I want to discuss. Okay, so this is my favorite part. A couple of ways that you can do selecting features. So that was one way of selecting features. Okay, I'm gonna take it up a notch for you, and I'm going to select multiple areas here. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to hold my control button down and just select a few features here. And you see that as I'm selecting them, I'm getting a higher number here the more I select. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to do control again. I'm going to skip a couple more, do control, control, control. And you see I've got several here now that are highlighted. Okay. What I'm going to do is come over here to my, and sometimes it's hard for me to remember exactly which tool is which. So it's really nice for me to be able to hover over with my mouse and see which icons are which. So click on this select tool. And I want to remind you, I have my impaired stations turned on, my impaired water stations turned on. That's important. So you're going to come back over here to your select tool. And you see you've got a couple different things here that are listed that are kind of bold. So these correspond to the layers that you currently have turned on. So I have my major water basins turned on. I've got the Catawba and all that turned on. If I zoom back out, you can see those all those major river basins on the map. I didn't want to do that. You can see I've got my counties turned on, but what I really wanted to show you, and by the way, just touching that map, it gave me 3 counties highlighted, and it gave me 2 major river basins. So I'm going to get to that in a second where you can highlight it on the map. But getting back to here, let's clear this a second and kind of jump the shark a little bit here, but kind of start to go back and select these. I'm going to hit my control. Getting so excited. Okay. Control. So I've got just some random ones selected within, in this case, the Savannah watershed. So I'm going to go back to my select tool, And what I want to show you this time is the layer that's turned on that I'm really interested in is this impaired waters layer. So I have 7 of these selected. You can see right here that it corresponds with this number right here. What I'm going to do is click on these ellipses and you can create a layer. So what you would do is just in this case, I'm just going to say random selected features. And when I click OK, you will see that it adds a layer to the table of contents. To me, that's just very cool. You can see the icon for it. You can do a couple different things within the ellipses here. You can view just those listings in the attribute table by themselves. So you've got these 7 features. Again, this is something where it might be neat, like if you wanted just information for just these couple of stations, you could export that to an Excel spreadsheet or export it to a CSV file, then save it as an Excel spreadsheet. But something else you can do with this, so we've got this as a layer, and now we can come back over to this ellipses. You can do some of these things, some of the things that you can do from this options tab, you can also do from over here. So you can export to a CSV file again. You can zoom straight to that layer that you just created or straight to those features that you highlighted. You can, if you have a account with GeoJSON or Arcgis Online, maybe you have like a content folder that you'd be interested in saving this to. You can view just that in the attribute table here as well as over here. Just a couple of other things, but again, the main thing in this case to my mind is creating that layer. So a neat thing that you can also do, and I'm going to clear all this and I'm going to turn this off. So there's a couple different ways besides the attribute table that you can say that you can select this. So I'm going to remove that. Let's see. Now I'm going to show you a couple of other things. One thing to keep in mind, this is a labeled layers icon tool. Depending on what you add over here, it may or may not show up over here. So recall that I added this layer with those selected features. Now it's going to show up over here in this labeled feature section. So you can actually, unfortunately, these might not label the same way as something like, for example, that would, because you see these are now labeling for stations, but because these didn't necessarily label that way, they're not gonna, let's see, let's turn something off here. There you go. So that's the label you're gonna get. You're not necessarily gonna get a station label like you did with the impaired stations. You're just gonna get this kind of label. But getting back to the real point here is, in this case, I want to talk about the impaired stations. So now you see we have stations here, and I also have it turned on over here. Okay, so actually I'm going to turn it off right here, and I want to show you something. If you come over to your select tool, recall that I had turned on the labeled features, but it's not highlighted over here in my select tool. So the only way that you're going to be able to get this highlighted and available to select is by turning the layer on here in the table of contents. So now that I'm turning this on, you can see it's highlighted, it's bolded, okay? Just want to make sure you're aware of that. So I'm going to go back to my labeled features and turn that off because it just can be a little bit busy sometimes if you're really zoomed out. Okay, and what I want to do is show you how to select multiples. So a couple different ways to select features here. You can select, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Select by line. I like to use a line if I'm selecting big, big areas. So if you start drawing, you would click to draw, and I'm going to go from that county to, well, that's not going to work because, yeah, well, actually, okay, so that county to that county, and then to that county. Okay, so it's highlighted actually more than one layer because I have more than one layer bolded. So it highlighted 2 basins for me, even though I didn't necessarily want it to. So if you turn that off, then it would only highlight the 2 things that I wanted. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go back here, click that, start drawing, click that, double click, and now I've only highlighted those counties. Again, I can do different things with that. I can create a layer, save to content, create a CSV file. Something else to show you is let's see if we'll clear that. Then you can actually select by points. And so you would want to hold your shift button down and you can click, you can click, you can click. And so you've just selected 3 different counties. An easy way of doing that. Okay. You can also select by lasso, which is to me just a lot of fun. Like that.
Amanda, you have a question when you get a
Okay.
sec.
Okay, we can pause for a quick question. What's the question?
Okay, she's asking about the labels that you had just created. Can it be saved in some way for others to see when they open the atlas?
Oh, I wish that was something. I had a conversation a couple of days ago about labels, and I won't get into it here because it's kind of a little over my head too. But unfortunately, you can't save the labels. You could potentially save the layer that you created. Again, you can save it to a CSV file, and from there, save it as an Excel spreadsheet and send it to others. You wouldn't necessarily be able to save something like you wouldn't be able to show, for example, the station number on the map. You were only going to be able to see the dots. Does that make sense?
Well, and then you can also, if you use any of the print features, save as a PDF. So it won't be in the atlas, but if you're looking to share this information with someone with it labeled, with it colored, with the information you want, with the base map that you want,
right?
You would basically just print it and save it as a PDF and be able to share it with others.
That's exactly right. And we can show that real fast. The neat thing is you can print multiple ones and it will save multiple ones here. So when you click on this, there's your PDF. So it tells you which layers you have turned on. If you were to add some text or measurements, that would appear as well. It will show your active layers. It will show your current extent. And you can also, based on where it was talking about advanced, you can tell it a different scale. You can tell it the author. If you want to copyright, include the legend, change the units to feet, whatever. So you can kind of manipulate this a little bit to create what you want. Also, this include attributes feature is pretty neat. So now that I've changed that up a little bit, I'm going to do print again, and you'll see how it saves kind of multiple PDFs for you. See, and so there's this one, and you can see kind of the difference between. Now we've got time here, but see 240. Let me go back and just make sure that we're looking at the most current one. Okay, yep, so that's 239. So you can see that there's different ways of printing out those PDFs. Hopefully that answers the question.
There was a second part of the question.
Okay.
So they're asking if you just use the CSV and you create their own layer. Is there a different way you could ask that, Ingrid? Or did Amanda answer your question and what she showed?
Go back over here.
I wonder if she's asking if she can upload her own CSV to the to create a layer.
You can add that data. You can add CSV to through this add data feature. Yes. I personally haven't added CSV. We could practice that together, Ingrid, if you want to call me. We can do that one day and practice it together. I've done more of the shape files and the KML files. But if you're talking about you have a previously created CSV file, then you could put it in here. Yes. I hope that answers the question.
It looks like it. She reworded it and said she's asking if you can create a layer, convert it to CSV, and then others can load it on their end and use it on a map they're working on.
Yes. So you create a layer, export it to CSV, save it as a CSV, send it as an email to a friend, and then that person can add that as a data layer to their atlas. Does that make sense?
She said yes. So
okay, great.
go.
We're on the same page. Okay. If you need further info on that, feel free to let me know. Okay. So a couple of other things I just want to discuss real quickly. Talking about, I think we've kind of hit this select. Hopefully y'all understand that and kind of can imagine some neat scenarios in which that could be helpful for you. So one thing I want to do real fast, so I'm going to turn a couple of these layers on just so we can kind of show you how you can save your work, because Ingrid, if you're talking about saving layers and sending them to others, there's a couple different ways that you can save some data in addition to these layers. So I'm going to come over here so you can see it's kind of an odd extent. I can see the ocean. I can see my impaired stations. I'm going to also turn on, let's see. Well, just classifications. Okay. So you can see I've got some neat stuff on here. I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to take too long to discuss draw. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just so you can see what all is saved in different ways. Go a little crazy. And so swim here. Okay. And then you can use a arrow. So just for kicks and giggles. Okay. So you see I've got my extent, and this extent is how I'm looking at the map right now. I've got a few features turned on. So the features are impaired waters and counties, and the shellfish harvesting classifications, which I know doesn't necessarily apply to y'all, but just kind of so you can see all the different things that this can do. I'm going to come over here and save the session. And this only works on your computer, so your workstation. If you try to save this to your computer and you go off and you work on your neighbor's computer, this isn't going to work. You're only going to be access it again from your workstation. And just so you're aware, it's not affecting the Atlas in general. It's only affecting your work in the Atlas. So hopefully that's clear. So I'm going to do example. I'm going to name it, and then I want to save it. And then I'm going to just X out of all this. And there's different kind of levels of how you can save things. So you've seen that. Also, I want to show you a bookmark feature. So I'm going to bookmark this. I'm going to say, I can change how this is titled. I'm going to say swim here. Okay. And then I'm going to completely change my extent. I'm going to way into the upstate. But oops, I forgot. I want to go back to where I just was. So I'm going to go back to my bookmark, and it'll take you right back to where you were. That's pretty cool to me. So what it's doing is it's taking you right back to the extent that you previously were. It's only going to take you back to that extent. So if you have anything well, in fact, I'll show you. I'm going to just refresh this whole thing. A couple different layers of this. So I'm going to go back to this bookmark feature. Swim here. So remember I had several different layers turned on. All I'm seeing right now is that extent or that view that I was at previously. So any of the layers that I had actively turned on, that text and graphics that I had turned on, none of that is saving this particular case. This is really helpful if you're in one place, but you don't want to lose your spot and you want to go somewhere else and look at something just real fast and then come back. So it's kind of like that back version. If you were to do this and this and this, it's just an easier way, and it kind of puts you right exactly where you were. So I'm going to refresh again because I want to show you kind of the next level up of saving. This app state right here, you would click on this and it will take you right back to where you were. So I'm going to try that one more time. I'm going to come over here. We'll refresh. And see, it took you right back to that extent. Now, in this case, again, it's going to restore that map to that extent. And if I had saved some, if I had some visible layers turned on, you would have seen that as well. When I X out of this application, if I had just some layers turned on and this particular extent, you would have been able to click that app state button, and you're going to come back and see those same layers turned on and this extent. The biggest, kind of, to me, the biggest, most involved, best way of saving things is coming back to the save session. And remember, I had some active layers turned on, I had some text, I had some graphics, and I had a certain extent. So now I'm going to just go back and load that map. And you see all those layers come back on. That extent that I was at is on. My text and my graphics appear as well. Okay. So hopefully that's been really helpful for you. I do have time to show you one or two other things, but because those are a little bit more self-explanatory than these things have been, I want to take a second and see if anybody has any questions from the chat, just to make sure that everybody's tracking and understanding so far.
Does look like we have one person typing.
Okay.
And then those of you that are new to Teams, oh, there we go. The question is, once you close the Atlas, does the bookmark get deleted? Can you share the book with colleagues?
Unfortunately, you can't share the book with colleagues. Again, it's only kind of happening for the workstation that you're working on. The only way to really share information with colleagues would be to save something as a CSV file or print it as a PDF, like print the map as a PDF. But going back to your question about the bookmark, I might redo that real quickly for you. So just so we can kind of see, we're going to change the extent. You see I have several different layers turned on. I'm going to go way up here in the upstate, and I'm going to say bookmark. Okay. And this time I'll say upstate. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to go back to swim here. And then I'm going to go back to upstate, and you can see the difference there. Again, those layers are on, but specifically it's more about the extent that you're at. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Looks like someone's typing another question.
Yep.
So until that pops through, if you've never used Teams before, or if you're using it on your phone to access the chat, if you can find the big giant red leave button, a couple buttons over from there, it looks like a little chat bubble. And then if you're on your phone, you may have to tap your screen to see the chat bubble to access that part of the app.
Yeah, just don't hit the leave button yet.
Not yet.
But
we'll wrap up shortly. We won't go on too much longer.
Okay, what if you log off and come back another day? Yes, that bookmark is still, I haven't tried it with turning off the entire computer. If you leave the computer on and you come back, say you X out of the application, and 2 days later you come back and you can hit that bookmark and you can hit that save session, that will work. And I'm fairly certain that if you turn the computer off, at least the save session will work. And I'm 50% certain that the bookmark would work. I just haven't tried that part to see what the difference is between turning the computer off and turning it back on. But if you, let's just say as a scenario, you had your computer on the whole time. If you come back a couple days later, you should be able to access that bookmark. It would be interesting to see if turning the computer off makes a difference. I should learn that. I hope that helps. Okay, great. This will be available as a recording. We will share, Sierra can share it through her web pages. I will send it on my Atlas web page. Also, I think that we would be able to send it to all the different attendance. So one thing we might want to do, and Sierra, hopefully you can do this, is if you go to people, I think that you can save the attendance list, and that way we know who attended, and we can send, well, we can send everybody who's registered an email. But one thing that I might just do real fast, I showed you the draw feature, and you can do multiple things with it. You can make circles, polygons, you can add text and graphics. But another thing that might be helpful for you would be the measurement tool. This is like if you wanted to measure area, you would just start drawing, and it gives you acres, but you can also choose, and then you would just double click it to end it. You can also choose it to be in square feet. We don't use kilometers here, but whatever you needed there, and then you can clear that. You can also do location if you wanted to make a lat long, and we talked about that a little bit with the past webinar. You can click on that and you get immediately your lat long, or you could clear all those out and then click back on this. I just had it. Okay. And you can also do it not only in degrees, but in digital as well. And then finally, you can do one other thing I do want to point out to you real fast with the drawing tool. It's to my mind, it's not clunky, but you have to know this going in. So if you were to do like a square, for example, and let's make it a pretty blue. So you're going to press down to start, let it go, and there's your tool. And then I just want to do another one just to kind of show you here. And then I'm going to do some text. Why are you not working? Text. Well, naturally it wants to not work now. Anyway, there are certain things that you can, yeah, even my squares went away. Okay, so no, and it's just decides it's not going to quite cooperate with what I want to show. Let's just do another square. Okay, you can undo that. Okay, you can undo, but that's the only one you can undo. So if this was like 3 times ago, a square that I made 3 times ago, so it's only going to let you undo the one that you just did. So if you wanted to put that one back on, then you can do that. You can clear the entire thing, but what's supposed to be happening is squares are supposed to be showing up here. So it's just tired of me working on it. We love technology, for the most part it works, but sometimes, you're trying to show something, it doesn't always work. So again, if you have questions, please feel free to call me. I hope that this has been helpful, and I will put my email in here in case you ever need to reach me. Let's see. I'm the coordinator for the South Carolina Watershed Atlas. So if you were to put in the, I believe, so and one way that you can get us is to contact us, and the email for the South Carolina Watershed DHEC, that goes to me. So I'll put this in the chat as well. That email, any emails to that go directly to me. So that's another way to get in touch with me. But you're also welcome to reach me either way. And since I'm the coordinator, I'm not the one who puts everything of the data in there, but I work very closely with her. Her name's Jeannie Itzen. She's wonderful. She's the GIS manager here at DHEC. If you have suggestions on how we can make it better, or if you have questions on how a particular tool works, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thank you for joining us, and I hope this has been helpful, and appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you to Amanda. And if anyone has any other questions after this webinar, definitely reach out. And Amanda's been known to help you one-on-one if it was a lot of information in a very short time period.
Yeah.
So, and you can even just email us and tell us what your goal is with a certain map, and we can help you make it if the technology is a little scary.
Yeah.
So,
We can also do another kind of, individual meeting like this if it helps you to get onto like a Teams or Zoom or something like that kind of thing where we can share screens. I'm very happy to do that too.
yep. So keep learning, keep protecting our waters, and we hope to stay in touch with you all.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.